Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. You are listening to Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons, and monsters and serpents, to Brothers of the Serpent podcast, coming to you on our emergency backup podcast day Thursday in the newly cooled tangent cube of science.
Climate change!
We got an amazing climate change system up here, high atop the Everest Plateau, amidst these dusty bones from an ancient seabed.
That's right.
Yep.
I'd like to thank Drew for coming out and pulling a vacuum on our climate change box.
Yeah, so this thing is, tell us about this thing.
It's I always get these backwards. It's like a split mini or mini split.
Mini split, it's one of those.
And yeah, it's running right now, and it's great. It's nice and cold in here.
Yeah. Yeah, so previous to this, we had a shitty window unit.
Yeah.
That when it came on, it was like, and we couldn't really use it, which we've talked about before.
Yep.
So,
created the format for the show.
Yeah.
And that's all we needed it for, and now it's out in the yard.
Right. Thanks, window unit.
Yeah. So, this one's got a unit outside, and actually the outside portion of it is also very quiet.
Yeah, it's pretty quiet. Yeah.
You go back around there and you can't hardly tell.
Yeah.
So
we were able to get that and other goodies in part thanks to the donations of you guys, which always helps. Thank you so much. Helps keep the lights on in here and keep it cool because we are in Texas where it is hot in the summer.
Yep.
So we really appreciate that, guys. All your donations definitely help out. Keep this podcast going, keep us going, and send us straight to pyramids. Coolly.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I also have a special gift for maybe 72 individuals who are maybe our best supporters.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. A special snakebro.com forwarding email.
Ah, there you go. There you go.
So
swag, folks.
that's right. We're gonna
join the snake force.
We're gonna start handing them out to you know who you are, special people.
That's right.
Whatever you want at snakebro.com is your forwarding email address.
That's awesome.
To whatever email address you want to give us.
Yeah, that would be cool. Join the snake force.
That's right.
So this is a watcherless show on our emergency backup podcast day Thursday.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
I was just checking, making sure.
Yeah, it does work.
I had to move the whole studio out of the tangent cube, and I just moved it back in. So,
Yeah.
just got to check that
You're good.
they work.
All the buttons work.
Hell no.
So yeah, we don't have the watcher. Unfortunately, he couldn't join us. We were unable to do it on our. So let's see. I don't know how much we've talked about this, but for a long time, our regular podcasting schedule was Tuesday nights, which meant that the podcast was published around usually by midnight-ish Tuesday night / Wednesday morning. But then the watcher got a new job, and he's an EMT, and EMT schedules are pretty tough.
Yeah.
They work 24s. It's a lot like think firemen, they stay in the fire station. So he's on call basically in the station for 24 hours at a time. So they've been moving his schedule around, and he's shifted companies a couple of times anyway. So that made us move the podcast day to Wednesday. So right now, as it stands, our normal podcast day, when you can expect the podcast to be published, is on Wednesday evening, usually around midnight. So basically you could look for it Thursday morning if you're already asleep at that time. But we weren't able to do it.
Central time.
That's right. That's central. So we weren't able to do it on Wednesday. We have a new property where we are looking for arrowheads. So we spent a lot of time doing that yesterday instead of podcasting. So now we're here on our emergency backup podcast day Thursday, and the watcher was unable to join us because he's on a 24 right now. So as always, when we have a watchless show, we will be skating on the edge of untruth. Just keep that in mind.
We have hung our certificates of ignorance on the wall in front of ourselves.
That's right. Just remember that we don't know what we're talking about, ever. All right, without further ado, Space Weather News. from spaceweather.com. Exiting the solar wind, Earth is exiting a stream of solar wind that caused G1 class geomagnetic storms and auroras over both ends of our planet on July 9th and 10th. Solar wind speeds are currently near 500 kilometers per second and dropping. These values could still spark some high latitude auroras, but the light show, if any, should fully subside by July 12th. Also, auroras seen from the stratosphere. A solar wind stream hit Earth on July 9th and 10th. The view from the stratosphere was sublime, while the gaseous material from the sun was buffeting. Coffee!
Ah.
Coffee has arrived.
Oh, wow.
Just interrupt our our space weather news there for some coffee.
Perfect.
Shout out
Wait.
to Todd and Crystal Mulville for the French cat.
All right, thanks, Sonic.
yeah.
So why is it way over there?
Ow.
Sorry.
That's nice and hot.
All right, thank you.
One of them is 2 minutes hotter than the other.
Oh. Ow.
Here's a napkin.
Thank you.
A napkin for coffee. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, my dear.
You're welcome.
Yes.
That is some good coffee. Yes, we are doing this very late, ladies and gentlemen. I got off work very late today. So, where was I? While the gaseous material from the sun was buffeting our planet's magnetic field, Ian Griffin photographed an outburst of auroras from NASA's Stratospheric Observatory for Infrared Astronomy, or SOFIA, who we know.
Yes.
A specially modified Boeing 747 aircraft that can skim the bottom of the stratosphere for crystal clear views of the heavens. Wow, look at that. That's really cool. It's below.
Yep. Definitely looks like Baphomet.
Yeah. It's right there. It's below them.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. It was the best aurora adventure ever, says Griffin. His name is Griffin. He's flying in the sky, taking pictures of it. Yeah. I was lucky to be a guest on board Sophia, which is presently flying out of Christchurch, New Zealand, during its annual trip to view the southern sky during austral winter. Last night, for almost the whole flight, the sky to the south was bathed by an amazing auroral display. Some of the forms were truly astonishing, and at times the aurora in the window was so bright it mesmerized all on board. The solar wind stream that caused the display came from a northern hole in the sun's atmosphere. Normally, such a stream might not be enough to spark spectacular auroras. This time, however, Earth's magnetosphere was already charged up by an unexpected CME impact on July 8th. The arrival of the solar wind stream only 1 day later tipped the magnetosphere into a state of glowing G1 class storminess. So, as it said, the solar wind speed right now is 485.7 kilometers per second, and the proton density is only 0.2 cubic centimeters.
No wonder it's been so hot.
Yeah.
I'm just attributing various things to the proton density.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm nailing it. Who knows?
Yeah. So speaking of Sophia, I did finally meet her. Right? You had talked about her before on the podcast, and then I show up to a party we're having, and she's there, and you guys introduced me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, cool, this is Sophia. And then I suddenly realized that I couldn't remember if she was supposed to be the embodiment of all knowledge or the spawn of Satan. So I kind of got nervous. Sorry about that, Sophia. Based on what you had said, I was like, wait, which one is it? Which one is the right one?
Yeah, I don't remember what I was reading, but it was something about that the name meant Baphomet or something.
Yeah, Sophia knowledge or whatever, and it was like, but it was also turned into a bad thing.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And then they were
it was trashing it religiously or something.
The Templars.
Yeah,
or something.
That's right. Yeah, so I got nervous because I couldn't remember which one it was supposed to be.
Yeah, that would be nerve-wracking.
Yeah, wait, embodiment of all knowledge or spawn of Satan?
If I get this wrong, I could die.
Yeah, I only have one chance at this. So yeah, Sophia, if you're listening, sorry about that. I couldn't tell which one. I couldn't remember which one Kyle said you were supposed to be. Okay, so I got a few listener communications here, just two that I want to read. This one came in over the website, and Kyle and I were talking about this before the show. Excuse me. So this came in as a comment on episode 103, and I'm just going to try to read this. It's very strange. From Anonymous. Been around to hear your stories over the last couple of months. in parentheses, just heard a voice say, in quotations, "Am I not entertained?" New paragraph. Oh, yes, I am. No punctuation throughout all this. I think that only you serpents can help me now. New paragraph. The mystery of the red and green tiny crystal flashes of colors dancing around me, ... New paragraph. Sometimes when I look away from something, it moves and then moves back to the same place as I look back at it. So I say this to you two snakes of the CIA underground. If you came here on a stony piece of olivine from the orbit between Mars and Jupiter just to loll at me, so that in my head, new paragraph. I think, quote, peridatites are important rocks, unquote, because of chromite. New paragraph. Quote, why are you snakes worth the salt? Question mark. New paragraph. You know, like 100 times last show. New paragraph. Love you guys. MJ Dundee.
I love it.
Yeah. It's cool, bro. I don't know what you're talking about, but you seem to be having a good time.
Thanks for the support.
Yeah. I think he was saying that he likes the podcast. I'm pretty sure that's what was happening.
I guess we are lulling at everybody.
Yeah.
We laugh a
Maybe
lot.
that's what it is. That's what he was saying. You're just lulling at every yeah. You came on a piece of olivine from the orbit between Mars and Jupiter just to lull at me.
That's right.
It's just funny. It's like, and then he's like, so it's like just to lull at me, ... So that in my head, new paragraph. I don't know what he's talking about. All right. I have one what is it called? A review on iTunes, which, by the way, we appreciate all the reviews. You guys are really racking the reviews up. Thank you so much for that.
Yep.
And remember, anytime you leave us, if you leave a review and you leave a comment on there, I will read it on the show. Well, so far I haven't found one that I'm like, I can't read that on the show. So if you leave one like that, I'll probably say that and not
You
read it
can
on the
try to make those.
show. Yeah.
That we
Go
can't
for
read
it.
on the show.
We'll read them to each other and laugh. But if you make one that is obviously not going to be read on the show, it won't be read on the show. So anyway, this one from the Nighthawk. Spectacular, he says. This is a fabulous podcast. The Snake Bros have a real understanding and deep passion for these subjects. The interviews are lively and informative. I am investing the time to listen through the entire back catalog. Once bitten, you'll be back for more.
I like it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. 1 star.
Thanks.
You got any news stories for us today?
No.
No?
Man, I had a rough week, folks.
Yeah. Week's been rough.
It was a long week, super early mornings, planting vines, very hot.
Yeah.
Studio's been in shambles. New property work, no cell service, lots of driving.
Yep. All of this is true.
On the phone a lot. So I haven't had anything to deep dive into, and haven't had a whole lot of time to listen to audiobooks or otherwise gain information for subject matter.
Yeah. Well, I have a string of articles that we can go through, all of them unvetted, so this will be great.
Yeah. I'm down.
Yeah.
I have a bunch of disjointed thoughts.
Yeah, I have some of those
I have these short periods of time where something will spark my imagination and I'll start going down this tiny it's like an ant hole, not a rabbit hole.
Right.
I get down there a little ways. But don't really have time to go deep.
Yeah. Well, let's try this one from mysteriousuniverse.org by Brent Swanser. This is a bizarre anomalous zone in the wilds of Russia. I always like stuff like this. So there are places in this world that, for whatever reasons, strange phenomena and mysteries seem to gravitate toward. These are places that exist in a realm somewhere in between what we know and what we can only guess at. and one of these supposedly lies out in the Badlands of Russia. Sprawled out across a vast expanse of remote wilderness in Russia, just about 600 miles east of Moscow, are the Perm region and the Sverdlovsk. Sverdlovsk?
Yeah, it's Sverdlovsk.
Yeah.
That sounds right.
Sverdlovsk. It's got a V in there at the end. Sverdlovsk.
Yeah.
Sverdlovsk. Okay. Sverdlovsk regions, and here buried within this sea of trees is a 45 square kilometer area of densely forested land near where the Silva and Molibka rivers merge, and not far from the village of Molibka that has long been a place full of strangeness and wonder, and which has come to be called the Triangle Molebsky, the Perm Anomalous Zone, or simply the M Zone, and has become a hotspot for all manner of high strangeness. The native Mansi people once considered this a very sacred place and long regarded it as a realm of spirits and gods. And locals and visitors alike have over the centuries reported a wide variety of strange phenomena from here, such as mysterious lights in the sky, luminous, translucent beings that stalk through the woods, dark figures, strange colored lightning, weather anomalies, and the sounds of disembodied voices or singing. Compasses don't work here, and electrical equipment is prone to stop working as well, and cell phones go dead. Witnesses have even talked of how watches will sometimes begin to spin backwards in the zone.
Wow. What kind of watches?
I guess if they're spinning, they're probably the old spring-driven. But yeah, that's a good question. Like, would a digital watch start going backwards because of some weird crystal?
Yeah,
thing
it seems
happening?
like it seemed more likely that it would be a digital.
He said spin, so I'm assuming it's like talking about hands here.
Yeah.
Which would be a spring-driven watch usually. I mean, it gets to be
really
about
odd.
Yeah. There are also the numerous physical effects experienced by those who come here, both positive and negative. It is not uncommon at all for people in the zone to be beset with fierce headaches, nosebleeds, nausea, dizziness, and muscle pain. They are also prone to visual and auroral hallucinations and powerful, inexplicable mood swings. There are also conversely, more favorable effects. For instance, it is thought that the area has healing abilities, and there are countless tales of people claiming to have been cured of all manner of ailments here. And even healthy people report feeling enhanced and improved somehow, gaining youthful vigor and emerging with increased intelligence. They also supposedly feel spiritually cleaned, with Russian ufologist Valery Yakimov saying of this, quote, "Healthy people feel the general improvement in all spheres, physical, mental, spiritual, moral, etc. It is necessary to mention the moral effects of M-Zone. The drawbacks of one's character seem to disappear here. The good intentions and high feelings come to life. One's soul becomes cleaner, higher, and calmer. You can almost feel yourself becoming a better person. Also, the creative effect of the M-Zone is quite noticeable. The abilities of people are sharpening there, and sometimes new talents and capacities unknown before begin to realize themselves."
Fantastic.
There are supposedly some spectacular cases of this in effect, such as the alleged case of the journalist and cosmonaut Pavel Murkatov, probably not saying that right, who had apparently once been a military dropout who had been forced to turn to journalism because of physical disabilities. He then decided to make a trip to the M-Zone to investigate its many odd tales for a possible story, making his way to the remote area with a group of others in an expedition. While in the region, Murkatov would claim that although he and his crew had fallen mysteriously ill at first, they were then overcome with an intense sense of well-being and found their heads filled with visions, emotions, and knowledge that forced into them that they could not explain. In Murkatov's case, he claimed that the knowledge he gleaned from that mystical place allowed him to shortly after recover from his disabilities and pass the test to enter the Soviet space program as a cosmonaut, and he would go on to largely credit his success with the mysterious effects and powers the Perm Anomalous Zone had bestowed upon him.
Wow.
So like a cosmonaut is saying that. That's pretty weird. By far, one of the most well-known of the many phenomena of the Perm Anomalous Zone is the unusually high concentration of UFO sightings here, and indeed it is considered by many to be one of the biggest UFO hotspots in the country. One of the most famous UFO-related incidents in the region supposedly happened in 1983 when Russian ufologist Emil Bachurin claimed to have seen a purple ball of light rise out of the thick forest to leave behind a patch of melted snow and ice measuring 206 feet across.
Wow.
Bachurin would also claim that he and his expedition had been chased by orbs of light through the trees that had burnt them with some sort of rays, with one of the team even completely knocked unconscious by one of the lights. Even more intriguing still is a case from 2005 when an expedition of ufologists from Yekaterinburg were in the zone and purportedly spotted a giant glowing ball above the trees. One of the expedition members would mysteriously go missing the following morning, and rather chillingly, a picture purportedly snapped of the UFO allegedly shows a beam of light extending from the object to this missing man. So what is going on here? The strange phenomena from the M zone is such that it has even managed to capture quite a lot of interest from outside of Russia. The American TV show Sightings did an investigation of the area, and apparently things got off to an odd start when the Russian government warned them that to stay any longer than 24 hours in the zone was very dangerous. So far, so strange, but when they began their investigation, it would all get even weirder still when their camp was apparently surrounded by encircling orbs of light. The locals of the area were also interviewed by the crew, and they confirmed that UFO sightings were a regular, almost mundane fact of life for them. With such a remote, strange part of the world hidden out away in this wild and rugged, exotic land, it is interesting to think about what could possibly be behind all of these stories. How can we explain all these disparate phenomena coming from this one patch of wilderness? Of course, other than the obvious theories that UFOs are drawn here for some reason, there are also other attempts to try to rationalize it. Considering that electromagnetic readings within the zone are amazingly high in some places, it is thought that this could be having some kind of physical effect, including hallucinations of perceived UFOs. Connecting to this is the idea that it could be the result of infrasound, which is subaudible sounds that have been shown to have a wide range of physical and psychological effects on human beings. So, are we dealing with UFOs and powers beyond our comprehension or mundane phenomena that can be explained? It doesn't seem settled yet, and it would seem to be the only way to find out for yourself is to get out there and check it out.
And do some science.
That's right.
Man, that's really cool.
So there are places like that around the world, and I'm sort of fascinated by them. Like, I think of them just as anomalous places. Like, so you have anomalous, you have anomalous people, right? And you have anomalous sightings of things, entities, cryptids, whatever. And then there are just zones or areas that themselves are anomalous and where.
Yeah, recently I've been thinking a lot about writing, songwriting.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm in a sort of a lull, no writing, not much writing.
Yeah.
And there have been periods of time when, I did a lot of writing. And a lot of that is just the discipline of, or maybe the time to really sit down and be alone and have like long expanses of time when you can work on something, as is, pretty much any art. But
Yeah.
I was thinking back early on when I used to write, when I first started writing, and the things that I would do and associated with the writing. A lot of it would happen at nighttime.
Yeah.
But another thing I would do is I would go hiking when we first got the property that we actually live on now.
Yeah.
I would go hiking way back in the hills and explore all this stuff. And I remember this one particular place that I found was on the side of a ravine, and there was this huge boulder that had fallen, on the side of the ravine, but it was sitting in a way that it had a flat top, and you could climb up on it and sit in there. And the trees all in the ravine were tall and had sort of a canopy.
Yeah.
It was just real beautiful and looking down into this steep descending ravine. So I find this place. I'm like, I got to come back here with my guitar. And I would do this many times, over and over, week after week or whatever. I would grab my guitar, just like when I had a moment, like, I'm going to go to that spot. I'd grab the guitar, take the four-wheeler or whatever, as far as I could get, and then hike with a book, a pen, and a guitar. No phone, no way to distract. We didn't even have cell phones at the time.
Yeah.
But I wrote a lot of songs sitting on that rock.
Yeah.
So I wonder if there are, and there were multiple places like that here. There was another ravine that had like a dry waterfall that I used to sit on top of and write.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking maybe there's small places that have interesting effects that are obviously less than this one. Like that one's got a major thing going on with electromagnetism, but there's probably all types of different fluctuations just as you move across the any landscape.
Yeah.
In various different forces or
But I
energy
wonder
levels.
if those things, because like what you're talking about, there is like geology associated with it too, right? So in this, there's no mention of like what is the landscape like. It's just like, okay, there's trees and stuff.
Yeah, there's 3 rivers that make
Yeah.
that sort of distinguish this landscape from the rest.
Right. But like the ancients at some point realized that
The journalist just wasn't into geology, man.
yeah. Right. And the ufologists
They were really
not
into Russian names, though.
yeah, there were a lot of Russian names in that story. Well, what I'm getting at, I guess, is that, so the ancients they began to build these places that had these effects on people.
Exactly.
So what I'm wondering is there something in the geometry?
Yeah.
So you sit on that rock and you've got a ravine, or are you sitting on the waterfall and so is there something about the geometry of the area, even though it's wild, there's sort of an intrinsic, some kind of sacred geometry involved that sort of gives you this cathedral-esque feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely gives a feeling, because before I even played any music or anything, I'd get there and just be like, whoa.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was the way it looked.
Yeah.
But there's a feeling associated with it.
Yeah.
And sort of I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah, it's a sacred spot. There's like an essence of the place.
Yes.
And there's something about it, and you can feel it
Yeah.
when you get there. Yeah. I know how that is.
There's many places around this before, because where we live is a subdivision, and each tract is 10 acres plus.
Yeah.
And so it's a large area. And before there were any houses or any development in all those different tracts, I would hike all around and explore them.
Yeah.
And there's many different spots that were just like, wow, this is special. And I would sit up there and write.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, I need to go do that again.
Yeah.
It was very effective.
Yeah. Well, and there's something about there's even a little bit of the quest in that too. Like you have to go there. You have to sort of,
Yeah.
you have to set up you have to get ready, and you have to go out on this journey
Right.
to get there in the first
It's
place.
the whole thing.
Right.
Is part of it.
Right.
But the place
It's sort of remote, and you have to
Yeah.
struggle to get there. And then when you finally get there, you're like, oh, yes, this is awesome.
yeah.
And it's a combination of how it looks and how that affects your mind, and maybe even some sacred geometry involved in the landscape.
Yep. And in order to do that now, I'd have to go far away. I can't just go traipsing off into the woods nearby, because even if I did find a place, I know that there's a neighbor not too far away, and I'll be like, working on some crappy song. There's no way you can do it. You can't get your psyche to forget that there's people over there going, what the hell is that coming off that hill? So I got to find me a new place, a new magical place to go.
But is it so, like, obviously the wildlife is involved in this, and I've seen I have a collection of pictures on my computer of trees that are in places that have anomalous magnetics, and the trees are all twisted and very strange looking.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's almost like the magnetic field being screwed up there, or not screwed up, but just like very tangled there, affects their ability to sort of grow in the phi, state.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm wondering if, like, even that has something to do with it. Like if the magnetic field is powerful and very stable and strong in some places, then all the trees are perfect in terms of phi, and that also gives you that cathedral, because then you have the pillars and the and the flying buttresses and the very high up stuff. And whereas in other places you're like, oh my God, this place is evil, because everything's like, the trees are just like, they look like, something out of old fairy tales or whatever. And they got big mouths and red eyes, and they're reaching out for you as you're walking down the path.
Yeah. That's where you write death metal.
That's right.
But you just made me realize something else.
That's where you write,
That's right. You just made me realize something else, though. A painter will go to a place, a special place in the woods.
Yeah.
Or on a landscape, and paint, his or her idea of what they're looking at, right?
Yeah.
So they're making a representation of the feeling and what they're seeing, the aura of the place in the painting. And you can do the same thing with lyrics. You're sitting there and you're observing this place, and you can use bits and pieces of it as similes or metaphors to other things. And that's kind of cool. I didn't realize that. I mean, I did that.
Yeah.
But this is what I'm doing now. I'm trying to think what were all these activities that I did and techniques.
Yeah.
I just haven't done any of that in a long time.
Just don't do it like Picasso, because I look at his and I'm like, what the fuck? The guy, what the hell was that guy looking at? I mean, I know he's like.
I'm trying to come up with an example on the fly, but it's not gonna happen. We gotta take a break. I'll think of something.
Yeah, we'll take a break and come back. I got a bunch more unvetted articles to read.
Got some lyrics about snakes.
Snakes!
Órale, chicos y vatos. Bienvenido a Hermanos de la Serpiente podcast. En la 10 por 10 por 10 cubo tangente de ciencia. As for you, Raul.
All right.
Raul and I are starting a new company. It's called Dos Vatos Locos. We're going to go run people's vineyards and orchards. Just two guys.
That's crazy. Yeah.
I told him today, I was like, we should just start a business called Dos Vatos. He goes, Dos Vatos Locos. So that's what we're going to do.
You got him to teach you how to say that whole thing in Spanish?
No.
Oh,
I figured it out on my drive home.
okay.
That's the only deep dive I did.
Okay. Make sure he listens to that.
It's probably not right.
Sounded good to me.
I did my best.
All right, this is from ancientorigins.net. So ancient-origins.net is a great website. This is by Anthony Sinclair. I think that's the name of the author. I think that's the byline. So it is titled 210,000-year-old Homo sapiens skull from Greece is oldest outside of Africa.
A new one. Wait, how old is this story?
This is posted on July 10th.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. I think this skull has been the one that's been contentious for many years.
Okay.
But let's find out. I haven't read the story at all. 210,000-year-old human skull could provide new evidence that our species left Africa much earlier than previously thought. A new study published in Nature of two fossils found in Greece in the 1970s. So, yeah.
Wow.
Shows that one of them is the oldest Homo sapiens specimen ever found outside of Africa by more than 50,000 years. This exciting discovery adds to a list of recent finds that shows the story of humanity's spread across the world and an interaction with other related species is much more complicated than we once thought. This human skull was one of two cranial fossils found in the Apidema Cave, one of a series of cave sites along the southwestern coast of the Peloponnese in Greece. I hope I said that right. The first, known as Apidema 1, comprised half of the rear of a skull case. Apidema 2 was a largely complete skull with a clear face, but had been heavily distorted during the fossilization process. Both were initially identified as Neanderthals and as uncontroversial specimens, disappeared into the general table of fossils from humans and their closest extinct relatives. But the recent study from a multinational team led by Katerina Harvati reconstructed the specimens digitally and dated them by measuring their radioactive decay. So its geometric morphometric analysis allowed the researchers to reverse model the distortions of Apidemia 2 to estimate what it would have originally looked like, and this confirmed that it was early Neanderthal dating from around 150,000 years ago. They also digitally recreated what the hull of the Apodemus 1 skull would have looked like and realized it was more likely a modern human or Homo sapiens, dating it to 210,000 years ago.
Wow.
So human evolution is thought of as a linear story of new species developing and replacing older, simpler ones. This narrative originally said that modern humans in the southern Cape of Africa developed a suite of original ways of thinking and communicating approximately 80,000 years ago. They dispersed out of Africa and across the world, sweeping all before them from about 70,000 years ago, leading to the demise of the Neanderthals in Europe about 40,000 years ago. But this narrative has grown ever more difficult to sustain because of a range of new fossil discoveries, improvements in their dating and genetic evidence. We now know that modern humans have existed for at least 300,000 years thanks to a fossil from the site of Jebel Irhoud in Morocco. But they didn't form a single population with a coherent pattern of behavior before they left the continent. Specimens from sites in the Levant, which is modern-day Israel, Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan, suggest the first wave of modern humans out of Africa were replaced by Neanderthals before the final, more successful human migration later on. Right? So first Homo sapiens comes out, and then Neanderthals kick their asses, and then another wave of Homo sapiens comes out and wins. This is the
something that they said just previous to that doesn't make any sense to me. Like there wasn't a coherent group of them before they left.
Yeah, so it says narrative has grown ever more difficult to sustain. We now know that modern humans have existed for at least 200,000 years, but they didn't form a single population with a coherent pattern of behavior before they left the continent.
Which is weird because if they sort of developed on this continent, it seems that the pattern of behavior would develop there.
Yeah.
If they're leaving, they're sort of dispersing, they're spreading out. How do you get a coherent?
Yeah, like it was a single culture or something. You know, I think that's what they're talking about. You're right. That is a little confusing.
That was just strange. But anyway,
so
moving on.
In southern Africa, modern humans were alive at the same time as a much smaller and seemingly more primitive species called Homo naledi. Genetic evidence from Siberia and recently Tibet has identified a new hominid species, the Denisovans, that shared a history of interbreeding and interaction with Neanderthals. And the presence of Neanderthal DNA in our own genome shown that they also bred with our species. So, growing complexity. The new data from Apodema further extends this complex picture of modern human dispersal and interaction with other hominin species. For example, the earlier human skull came from a time when the surrounding environment was warmer and wetter than the cold and arid conditions the later Neanderthal specimen would have lived in. 140,000 years later. This emphasizes that our explanations for population dispersals need to take into account the context of major environmental change and the opportunities and challenges that went with it. Our traditional narratives and implicit assumptions of the evolutionary history of modern humans are well and truly broken. The ever-increasing complexity of the evidence we now have means there is no simple reason for hominin dispersal or replacement. We now need a renewed emphasis on the archaeological evidence to understand and compare what hominins were actually doing in the landscapes where we find their remains. This will enable us to explore the nature of their interactions and not just narrate the consequences. So this paper just recently came out. So this article is just basically saying, so now the story is really busted. This linear development idea. And see, the thing is, we've talked about this skull before. What?
I was looking for a celebratory button that I could push here, but I couldn't find one. You know, like a song that you party to.
Oh, yeah.
Like you do the happy dance.
Yeah,
but
it needs to be like a,
Theory is busted. Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, we need a jingle for that.
Yeah, we do.
The destruction of the standard model.
That's right.
Jingle.
Yeah, I think of like a victory march.
That's
something.
what I. Yeah.
So yeah, we've discussed this skull before, and it has been I mean, Ancient Origins has older articles about this same skull where basically the people are complaining that it's been sidelined, for so long. It's just been sitting in the basements of museums. No one's paying attention to it. And it's really good evidence and now pretty concrete evidence that Homo sapiens were out of Africa long before the Standard Model says they were.
Yeah. So how long is it going to take for that one fact to disseminate all through all of the
Well, it got published in
all
Nature.
the textbooks?
Well, yeah, textbooks, I don't know, but it got published in Nature, so that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah. But I mean, now they have to. What are they going to do with the story? You know what I'm saying? I just don't think the story's going to get dropped
Right. Yeah.
right away.
It's not.
I can imagine it's going to take a while.
But that's pretty. One of the reasons they didn't like it was because if skull 1 was a Homo sapien, then it's so much older than the Neanderthal skull that they found there.
Yeah.
They don't like that because again.
So how old are the oldest Neanderthal skulls?
That's a good question. I don't know. But you're not supposed to have a successive of evolutionary species living side by side, at least not for that long of a period. You know what I mean? Like, in other words, if we evolved from Neanderthals, which obviously is not the case at this point, if we evolved from the Neanderthals, then you can't really have Homo sapiens and Neanderthals living for 100,000 years together.
Yeah.
And it seems quick, too. That whole thing seems very fast. Like, that stuff is happening quickly.
Like, there was one mutation that changed from Neanderthal to Homo sapien, Homo sape, and suddenly there was a whole bunch of the Homo sapien.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just doesn't make sense. It seems like it should be a slow progression.
Yeah.
And where are all of the in-between pieces? That's always been my biggest thing with evolution.
Yeah.
Like, where
Where's the guy that was part Neanderthal, part Homo sape? Is that what
where
you're saying?
yeah, where there should be a lot of different ones all
Yeah.
the way through.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not evolution if it's abrupt changes,
Right.
is it? I mean, that's not that's not the idea.
Well, I mean,
I've-
like, no. I mean, like, you should have abrupt, tiny changes,
Yeah,
which would result in like a gradual macro change.
That's
Is
what I
that what
mean,
you're
yeah.
talking about? Yeah. But you shouldn't have just suddenly you have a whole new species that has all this different phenotypes and
Right.
morphology, and which is what. I mean, like if you look at genetic comparisons between Homo sape and Neanderthal, we're very, 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 very close genetically, but you still have a difference of like many millions and millions of base pairs. That's a lot of data, and all those base pairs have to change and become functional. They have to change and change in a way that's functional for whatever organism it is, right? So, like for example, like commonly said, because I don't know the difference between Homo sapiens and Neanderthal. But I know that they say that, genetically there's only a 2% difference between humans and chimpanzees, for example.
Right.
But that's 60 million base pairs.
yeah,
So if you think about that, every one of those 60 million base pairs has to change into something else and remain viable and make it so that the organism that has them is not just going to fall apart.
yeah,
So in the like old school sort of Darwinian or accidental evolutionary model, each one of those changes would have to be some kind of by chance mutation that would take place and then become viable because it was and then it would propagate because it was an improvement of some kind. Right. And then you have to have that happen 60 million times, basically. Technically, I'm sure that's not exactly correct.
You could have a bunch of them happen at once, and then that remains viable. And
Right,
So,
so you have a whole
in
section
that
of-
one.
yeah.
More happen.
Yeah.
But it seems like all of them would be like, if it's happening with offspring, not the living being, but the offspring. Is that the idea? So
Yeah.
in other words, you come out one way, you don't change while you're alive. It's your offspring that have something changed.
Right. The mutation
Correct?
happens.
Is that that the idea?
Mutation happens during, or because, or like due to, or during like conception,
Development
or in utero, or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
So you can imagine that all of the offspring of all of these things are changing in different ways.
Yeah.
And so then a changed one comes out, and it's viable, and then that one reproduces with not a changed one, a regular
right,
one.
Yeah,
And so
you're not
it's
gonna have two changed ones that can somehow reproduce with each other. Yeah,
that are the same changes.
yeah,
But you would have two. You could have two that are changed in different ways that then reproduce with each other.
Yeah.
But it just seems like if that was the case, that would be happening all the time. Why would it? Why wouldn't we notice that today in all? Like, what are those worms that have they've completely
like robo slugs.
yeah. I'm trying to think of this worm. It's like the most simple organism.
Planarian worm? No, those aren't simple.
It's It's not the most simple organism. It's the most simple one that has like a neural network.
No, is it the guy with the 6 legs?
I don't know. It's really simple. It's
Yeah.
a worm, and they've completely mapped its entire neural network. It's got like 300 neurons or something like
Okay.
that. And they can study its behavior and
Yeah.
see what all the things that are firing that are making it do whatever it's doing.
Yeah.
It seems like you would be able to see that thing reproducing and having all these changes happening.
Yeah.
Or any type of organism that reproduces really often.
Yeah.
That you should be able to see the process happening.
Yeah. And there is some adaptation that they have seen. Like there's often a study cited with a bottle fly or something like that where they've done that because you can get a fly to reproduce really quickly, right?
Yeah.
And you can see changes that happen into it that are adaptations, like slight changes in size of the eyes that carries on through the generations
Okay.
or whatever. But that isn't speciation, and that's the problem, you know?
Yeah.
Homo sapien, Neanderthal, 2 different species.
Yeah.
It's not like Homo sapien, just Neanderthal with bigger eyes. You know?
Yeah.
Like, there's a whole lot of stuff different, even if they're very small. Based, you know, if you just looked at them, you would say, okay, that guy is like much shorter and much wider and has a totally, you know. But when you really start paying attention, you see that the whole muscular structure is vastly different. Now, they may have all this, they may have the same number of muscles that we do, and they're all basically in the same place, but they're all of different shape, and they have, you know, and the closer you look, the more complex the changes become to the point to where there's enormous amounts of change. And then, of course,
Yeah.
you can see it just in the skeletal structure, that they're not the same as us, and there's all this morphology that's totally different, and there's a lot of genetic data that has to be different for that to happen. So
If it is an evolution, what is happening? I mean, what the hell is going on?
I don't know. Like, one of the interesting adaptations or whatever it is that you would call it is it happens in. It's very easy to see in a progression of megalodon teeth, right? Megalodon is like that dinosaur shark thing. Yeah. So they start out, the oldest megalodon teeth are just enormous shark teeth, you know. But as you go, as you progress through time and you get closer to, you get younger and younger teeth, they become serrated. Now, that isn't a big change, but it is in one way. It doesn't make it a different species, but suddenly they now have serrated teeth, and that is, you could see how that might be like he would be better suited over long periods of time to getting his prey, right? Because every bite is going to be worse and different and would be more likely to kill his prey.
Right.
You know, like even if he only gets one bite off, then he has the whole, like, because he's got particles of stuff because his teeth are serrated now.
Yeah.
And it's a toxic bite.
Yeah, septic bite.
Yeah, septic bite or
you have
whatever.
a septic bite in seawater? I don't know about that. Maybe you can.
Yeah. There's a lot of fluoride in seawater. It keeps the teeth clean. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. Just like, so is that a different species? No. You know?
Yeah.
He just has he has serrated teeth, but you see it over time. It happens. It's very clear. Now, that's an adaptation, you know? But still, there's a lot of genetic information that has to change in order for those teeth to become serrated and then stay that way.
Yeah. Maybe I'm biased, but it seems kind of boring. It's too quaint
Yeah.
that it would just be this gradual thing over time.
Right. But
It's
that's
more interesting to me that there's some weird thing that happens occasionally that just suddenly causes
Yeah.
new life forms.
Well, I think it may
come
be
into whatever.
Yeah, my most recent working hypothesis on this is that it's the same as geological change. During long, stable periods, there is very slow, like 1 grain of sand, 1 drop of water, except that this time it's like 1 base pair, one tiny mutation at a time. But then there are enormous cataclysmic periods, and then during that period, we also have enormous evolutionary changes that are happening as well. And those may all be connected in some way.
Yeah, that's really cool to think of.
Because it looks like that for sure. You know, you get a huge wipeout of species, and then suddenly there's an explosion of entirely new ones out of nowhere. And you're like, wait a minute, what did they evolve from after everything just died?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you basically got wiped all the way back to like amoebas, and then suddenly you have ferns and they're entirely new kinds of ferns and fishes and crustaceans and stuff, like the Permian extinction and then the Cambrian explosion.
That's a great name. Cambrian explosion?
Yeah. Yeah.
Future band name.
Yeah, the Cambrian explosion event.
I don't know, man. I miss the Neanderthals. Wish they were still around.
Yeah. Do you think that they exist in our folklore about dwarves?
Yeah, I mean, well, that would be
The hill
Homo
people?
floresiensis or whatever they are.
Well, those would be hobbits. Those are the hobbits.
Okay.
The Neanderthals are the dwarves. They're like 4 or 5 feet tall and 4 or 5 feet wide. And they live underground, and they're just like carrying giant, and my axe, right? Those kind of guys.
Yeah.
Just freaking enormous beards. And the women also have enormous beards.
Yes.
They're all no dwarf women. But yeah, I don't know. I think that I wish we had the Watcher here to talk to us about base pairs and stuff, because he knows a lot more about this than I do.
Yeah. What a loser.
He's out there saving lives. What a freaking loser. Instead of doing the podcast with us. God, that guy. You
guys gotta send him a 1 down box.
Yeah, he's on Twitter. Follow him on Twitter and tell him he's dumb for not doing the 104
He
with
should
us.
be doing the podcast in the ambulance.
Yeah. That would be great.
No, you guys are wrong.
All right, so keeping in that vein, I have another Ancient Origins article here, ancient-origins.net. This one's by Alicia McDermott, also posted on July 11th. This one's called The March of the Denisovans. Evidence of archaic human gene now detected in the Orient. The Denisovan story keeps evolving. This group of ancient hominids has been something of a mystery ever since they were first discovered in 2010 as an extinct sister group to the Neanderthals. Sister group? No brothers.
Well, you got a problem with that?
All the Denisovans were chicks.
You got a problem with that, man?
No. It's weird. I mean, why can't they just be an extinct...
Why is that weird, man?
Why can't they just be an extinct group? I mean, it would be weird if it said brother group, too.
Yeah,
It's
you're right.
strange. Bits and pieces of their tale keep coming to light, and almost everything is a surprise that makes international headlines. And, of course, many people want to know more about the results of the mating of Denisovan and other hominid species. Of particular interest is how Denisovan DNA has lived on in our species. The latest in Denisovan-related discoveries comes from an analysis of a 160,000-year-old archaic human molar fossil that was discovered decades ago in China. So here we have like a decades-old discovery, and now they're finding out,
Yeah, it's like forbidden archaeology.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I mean, come on. That skull was in the 1970s.
Yeah.
You know, it's probably in his...
It probably is, yeah.
Why can't I think of his name?
Michael Cremo.
Michael Cremo's book.
Yeah. Science Daily reports that the study, quote, offers the first morphological evidence of interbreeding between archaic humans and Homo sapiens in Asia, unquote. Science Daily explains that the study, which is published in the journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, this is another enormous one, is focused on a, quote, 3-rooted lower molar, a rare trait primarily found in modern Asians that was previously thought to have evolved after H. sapiens dispersed from Africa, unquote. So they have a picture of how it has 3 roots.
Oh, yeah.
The traits present to the fossil suggests both that it is older than previously understood and that some modern Asian groups obtained the trait through interbreeding with the sister group of Neanderthals, the Denisovans, explains Shara Bailey, a professor of anthropology at New York University and the paper's lead author in a New York University's press release. In a previous study, which was published in Nature in May of this year, Bailey and her colleagues concluded that Denisovans were inhabiting the Tibetan Plateau well before Homo sapiens migrated to the region. That work, along with the new PNAS analysis, focused on a hominid lower mandible found on the Tibetan Plateau and by Shia Karst Cave in Xiahe, I'm probably saying that wrong, China in 1980. Yeah, so... It was also an important discovery because it is the first time researchers have identified the physical remains of a Denisovan outside the cave that gave them their name, Denisova Cave in Siberia. The Denisovan jaw also has an interesting discovery story. An anonymous monk found the prehistoric hominid jaw fragment and then gifted it to the 6th Gun Tang living Buddha, who later gave it to I don't know how to say these Chinese words. Lanzhou University. The jaw sat in the university collection for 30 plus years before the study co-author, Dongzhu Zhang of Lanzhou University, decided it was worth a look in 2016. Heavy carbonate crust was attached to the mandible, and U-series dating told researchers that the jaw is at least 160,000 years old. According to a press release by the Max Planck Institute, this is the earliest hominid fossil found to date on the Tibetan Plateau, and that means that the people living in the area had already adapted to living in this high-altitude, low-oxygen environment long before Homo sapiens even arrived in the region. And I wonder if it was, let's say, 160,000 years, I guess. I wonder how much lower the oceans were then, so it maybe have been even 400 feet higher above sea level than it is now. However, as National Geographic notes, while the jaw was found where oxygen levels are low, without the DNA itself, scientists can't be sure the jaw's owner carried the adaptation to survive in that thin air. The same jaw has now been analyzed by New York University anthropologists Susan Anton and Jean-Jacques Hublin, director of the Department of Human Evolution at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology. Their study centered on the molar and was focused on exploring what it can tell us about the relationship between archaic humans who occupied Asia more than 160,000 years ago and modern Asians, as the press release states. Bailey says that the results of the study show that, quote, in Asia, there have long been claims for continuity between archaic and modern humans because of some shared traits. But many of those traits are primitive or are not unique to Asians. However, the 3-rooted lower molar trait is unique to Asian groups. Its presence in a 160,000-year-old archaic human in Asia strongly suggests the trait was transferred to H. sapiens in the region through interbreeding with archaic humans in Asia. So there's been quite a lot of interest in the Denisovans mating with other hominid groups lately. Another recent study shows that their genes live on in populations in the Philippines and New Guinea, to China and Tibet, where people have inherited 3 to 5% of their DNA from Denisovans. Wow. Even more exciting is that the genes had only entered the human genome as late as 15,000 years ago, suggesting modern humans and Denisovans were mating. And as Adra Collins has stated, moreover, that it was from them that these modern human groups inherited roughly 400 genes, including an immune gene variant, TNFAIP3, and a gene involved in diet, WDFY2. And that's not all. For some time now, researchers have supposed that the Denisovans were mating with Neanderthals. Proof for their offspring came in 2018 when a genetic analysis of a bone fragment found in a Denisova cave was shown to have the DNA of a Denisovan mother and a Neanderthal father. Svante Apabo, director of the Department of Evolutionary Genetics at the MPI-EVA and lead author of that study, said, Neanderthals and Denisovans may not have had many opportunities to meet, but when they did, they must have mated frequently, much more so than we previously thought. Man, I wanted to change that quote. When they did, they drank Dos Equis.
So, Homo sapiens are now 200 and something thousand years old.
300.
Outside of Africa.
Yeah.
200 and something thousand years ago.
210 to 300,000.
And their genes or Denisovan genes show up in the Homo sapiens 15,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. And this tooth and jawbone are basically 160,000 years old dated.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to get the numbers together. I'm like, it still seems like there's something weird going on with the dating to me.
And I don't understand at all the DNA sequencing stuff. Like, I'm trying.
No one does.
I mean, reading Graham's book, America Before, he goes through in detail all of this stuff about the sequencing, and I'm just like, I don't get it. I don't understand at all what is happening here.
Yeah, and they start talking about haplogroups and stuff like that, and you're just like, okay.
And they're like, so obviously these ones came down from through here this way. And you're like, how do you know that?
Yeah.
By whatever you're talking about there, which I don't understand either.
Yeah. Well, we got to take a break. Let's think about that, and we'll come back after the break. And
Maybe
talk
that's
about
what
it
I should
more.
do a deep dive into next, is trying to understand, trying to get a grasp on at least the basics of.
Yeah.
Graham seems to have a sort of basic grasp of what, or
Yeah.
maybe he just, I don't know. Maybe he's just
Quoting the scholars.
quoting stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's really tough, but twisted snakes, they're really difficult to figure out.
Yeah. Keeping the in-laws of the world awake by reason of our babble here at the Snake Bros Institute for Advanced Coprolite Studies, where there are no degrees, only certificates of ignorance and large cups of coffee.
It's 12:30 a.m.
Yeah,
I've been up for a long
the
time.
next day. Yeah. Yep, long day at work. I just want to read articles and not do anything else. Just kind of read. I can't think right now.
Come on, man. We got to keep these people awake. They're working right now.
Oh, shit.
These Adamu.
Watch the road.
All right. So I just found this one. I had bookmarked a while back. It's from Smithsonian.com. May 15th. The teeth of early Neanderthals may indicate the species' lineage is older than thought. Some of the oldest known Neanderthal remains include teeth that could push back the split with modern human lineages, but not all scientists are convinced. In a cave called the Pit of Bones, up in the Atapuerca Mountains of Spain, a collection of 430,000-year-old teeth are curiously smaller than might be expected for the skulls they were found with. The anomaly has one scientist suggesting that the lineages of modern humans and Neanderthals split some 800,000 years ago, tens of thousands of years earlier than genetic studies have estimated. Ada Gomez Robles, an anthropologist at University College London, studies how ancient hominin species' teeth evolved over the ages. She believes that because the ancient teeth look too modern for their era, they must have evolved unusually quick or, as she finds more likely, had more time to evolve than has been generally believed. The new research was published today in Science Advances. As various hominin species evolved, their teeth changed in notable ways, generally becoming smaller over time. Studying the teeth of various early human ancestors is one of the most common ways of differentiating between species and even identifying new ones. Gomez-Robles' previous research suggests that teeth tend to evolve at a relatively standard rate across hominin history. If that's true, the molars and premolars unearthed from the Spanish cave are smaller than would be expected given their age. Quote, "When we look at these teeth, they are very similar to the teeth of later Neanderthals, even though they are much older," end quote. Gomez-Robles says, "In this study, we've tried to examine the amount of time that these early Neanderthals would have needed to evolve this dental shape, which is so much like the dental shape of Neanderthals that are much later," end quote. Neanderthals and Homo sapiens share a common ancestor, but exactly who that species was and when their later lineages diverged from it is a difficult mystery to untangle. But there are clues, and the new tooth study is far from the first evidence to emerge even from Cima de los Huesos, the fossil-rich cave site in Spain's Atapuerca Mountains. The hominins who lived here, some 30 individuals who've been well studied over the years, appear from their morphology and DNA to be early Neanderthals. In fact, the remains represent some of the oldest known Neanderthals. But how close were they really to the common ancestor of both that... what? But how close were they really to the common ancestor of both that vanished species and our own? Forget it.
Both that vanished species and our own. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I wasn't going to do it again. Sorry. Genetics has helped us peer into the past and sketch out the ancient branches of the hominin family tree. A 2016 study of 430,000-year-old Neanderthal remains from the Cima de los Huesos site estimates the time of the Neanderthal split from the Homo sapiens lineage at 550,000 to 765,000 years ago. Other genetic studies similarly suggest divergence times that are less than 800,000 years ago. Paleoanthropologist Rick Potts, director of the Smithsonian's Human Origins Program, says that while Gomez-Robles raises some plausible ideas, he's far from convinced that rates of dental evolution are as standard or predictable as the paper suggests. She's bitten off an interesting topic here, but I just don't see the argument that dental rates of evolution are absolutely known to the point where we can then say that for certain the Neanderthal modern human divergence must have been earlier than 800,000 years ago.
Wait. The guy's a paleoanthropologist and his name is Potts?
Yep. That's right. Potts says.
Potsherds.
Yeah. A variety of molecular genetic studies suggest it's more recent. So he didn't want to push it back.
Right.
It's a pretty long story. Should I keep going?
Yeah.
It's possible, Gomez-Robles says, that the teeth evolved at an unusually high rate due to strong selection for the genetic changes. This accelerated change could have happened if the remote population lived in isolation from Europe's other Neanderthals. But Gomez-Robles believes that the teeth simply evolved over a long period of time, which, according to her timeline of dental evolution rates, would put the split between the Homo sapiens and the Neanderthal lineage at 800,000 years ago or older. Quote, "Everything else, such as the face and the anatomy of these hominins, looks kind of intermediate," Gomez-Robles says. "They look like what we'd expect for hominins of that age, but the teeth look very, very different. They look very Neanderthal, and the only thing that's different is the teeth. If there was selection, we'd expect that to have an effect on something else, like the face, and not..." Okay. If there was selection, we'd expect that to have an effect on something else, like the face, and not just the teeth. Potts also points out several possible causes of misinterpretation, including a variable called generation time that could greatly impact the timeline of dental evolution over many thousands of years. If you have a quicker or a slower pace of development of the teeth, of growth, that would affect your estimation of rates of evolution, he says. Scientists do have evidence that the speed of tooth development change over evolutionary time. Microscopic studies of tooth enamel layers allow researchers to calculate the days between a fossil hominin's birth and the eruption of its first molar, showing that 1.5 million years ago, young Homo erectus got their first molar at around 4.5 years old. By about 200,000 years ago, Neanderthals got the same tooth by around age 6, as we humans still do today. Quote, and we don't know when, between 1.5 million years ago and 200,000 years ago, that rate changed to a much slower rate of development of the teeth, Potts says. So that's a lot of wiggle room.
Wait a minute. So do Neanderthals and Homo erectus not have a baby set of teeth?
No, it's saying, no, because you get molars even in the baby set of teeth.
Right, but those are gone. How do you find those from in a fossil of an adult?
Maybe they're finding them in the fossil of a child?
I guess. Maybe.
I don't know. Doesn't say. Serious.
We get 2 sets of teeth from the nifs.
I'm going to have to chew on this story for a while. Hybridization between different species, which appears to have been rampant during the era, is another possible complication. Mating between the modern human and Neanderthal species occurred as recently as 50,000 years ago. So now, okay, your story was talking about the Denisovans.
Yeah.
There's all hell breaking loose in interglacial Europe during this time period, where there are populations separating from one another for periods of time, probably undergoing fast evolution, coming back together thousands to tens of thousands of years later, Potts says. We don't know what the effect of that evolutionary population's history, dividing and coming back together over and over again during Ice Age and interglacial Europe, would have had on mechanisms of dental evolution. Given the difficulties of untangling different lines of ancient evidence and the relatively small differences between genetic and tooth evolution estimates of the modern human Neanderthal split, one might wonder why uncovering the true timeline is so important. But filling in such blanks is the only way we can accurately chart the many evolutionary shoots and branches of our own family tree and learn how we became who we are. Even when the difference is not huge, Gomez-Robles says, the implications of those differences can be quite important in terms of understanding the relationships between different species and which ones are ancestral to another. So.
Why are smaller teeth an evolutionary advantage?
That I don't know. Maybe your jaw can grow smaller so your brain can get bigger. But Neanderthals had bigger brains, so I don't know. But see, okay, we talked about this before.
I know that they argue that it's the food type, but...
Well, I was thinking of
Doesn't the teeth dictate the food type, not the other way around?
Yeah, I thought so. But also, in terms of size, isn't it like, living in warm or cold climates dictates size of body?
Yeah, it can.
Or in many cases it does.
Yeah. Yeah, so the basic general idea is the colder it is, the
like
more,
when you're looking at mammals.
Right. In mammals, the colder it is, the more massive you want to be in order to retain your heat.
Right.
Very small mammals have a hard time staying warm in very cold climates.
Yeah.
So, unless you're a rabbit. Rabbits can live everywhere.
You look like you were trying to scare me.
It's pretty terrifying.
What?
And cats, actually. Cats can live everywhere. They can live, they're very versatile, They can live in packs or as solo. I'm talking about like what we think of as domestic cats now. You see them sometimes in huge herds, right? There'd be a whole bunch of them all together, and they're sort of wild, and they just sort of run around as a big herd of cats. But there's also just one of them could split off and go off and live by himself and be totally fine.
Yeah.
You can take them all the way up to the Arctic or all the way down into the jungle of the Amazon, and they totally are fine.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah.
I always wondered. I got this dark colored cat, and like mostly black.
Yeah.
And it just goes and lays out in the sun.
Yeah,
and
he's
it's
like, "This is
90
great."
degrees. I'm just like,
Yeah, and then it's the middle of winter, and he's still laying there, and he's like, "This is also great."
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, so I don't really understand the. I have questions, and these questions may be answered, but I have questions about the the whole jaw size and teeth size thing and how that, like, why is it getting smaller over time? You would think that there should be a sort of, that it would follow if it was really some kind of
Climate thing.
if it was an evolutionary adaptation to current conditions, then you would think you would see this sort of fluctuation, you know, that during warmer times your teeth and your jaws get smaller because your food is easier to get and you're able to get softer. You don't have to eat as much rough things because food is more plentiful during an interglacial, right? And then during a glacial period, your teeth and jaw get enormous so that you can chew really difficult stuff.
Yeah.
Instead, they think that there's just this linear development of slowly smaller jaw and teeth.
Yeah.
That may be an artifact of the sample size. They just don't have very many samples because obviously hominid bones they're pretty rare that old.
Yeah. What are we having tonight? Tundra and mammoth balls. Oh.
Yeah.
Trying to chew it.
Yeah. Trying to chew frozen root balls and stuff like that and just
Yeah.
you know, hard shelled, like the kinds of plants that can survive in that kind of environment have hard shells and just,
Yeah.
and they're very fibrous and you know, or then you have the thing like what we were seeing with the the Pueblo people, you know, and that their teeth were like, they wouldn't talk to us very much about the remains of the Pueblo people.
Yeah.
I tried to ask a couple times about burial practices and stuff, and the guy was like, we don't talk about that. It's a sort of a taboo. And I'm like, well, I mean, come on, guy. What have you found? You know, but anyway, they did imply that the teeth of the Pueblo people were sort of ground down to nubs.
Yeah.
And they think that that's because they ground their grains on granite.
On sandstone and granite.
Sandstone
yeah.
and granite, and you end up with all these little particles of minerals in there, and so they're chewing that stuff, and it over time grinds their teeth down.
Yeah.
Did you buy that story?
No.
It seems unlikely. But I mean, like, you know, you hand me a bowl of corn, and I take a bite of it, and it's like, come on, guy, take this back, run it through a strainer.
Yeah, or just find a different type of stone.
You can't wash it off? I don't know. Yeah.
Find a different type of stone. Yeah, I guess you could put it in water and all the stony stuff would fall to the bottom.
Yeah, fall to the bottom.
And the corn would float.
Right. Didn't make any sense to me.
That's a good point, man. Let's go back there and tell that guy.
You're wrong.
Well, it was the interpretive tour.
Right.
Remember?
Yeah, every tour was interpretive.
But yeah, that's probably what the theory is, though.
Yeah.
Those boat stones were missing a lot of rock. I mean,
Yeah. But it just seems like
they were hollowed out.
It
like
just seems
boats.
like you could easily wash the minerals out of the plant material because the plant material will float, and the stone dust won't. You know, in most cases, you get it in a bowl or whatever, and you sort of do a little bit of sifting, and all that stuff would silt to the bottom, and you would have clean.
Yep.
I don't know. It just didn't make much sense to me.
Yep.
But maybe they're so fine that it would just be colloidal or something. I don't know.
I don't know.
I mean, if you're making flour is ground pretty fine. And if you have a whole bunch of tiny little rock particles mixed into that, it just seems like
Maybe
then
they'd be embedded into the
then you
little
wouldn't be
pieces of-
chewing it because it's like, it'd be.
Yeah. Mix it up, make a shake.
Yeah. It's like it comes out in your bread, you know? It's like, what is it? They think it acts like sandpaper. Can you really chew something down to where your
But
teeth...
what would grind their teeth down?
Right.
What else would?
That's what you just eat rocks.
They had bad case of TMJ.
Yeah. I don't know. What would grind their teeth down?
Chewing on rocks, yeah.
Well, it seems like chewing on things that are difficult to chew on would grind your teeth down.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I've been chewing on ice cubes my whole life, and my teeth aren't ground down.
That's a good point.
That's crystalline structure right there.
Makes a cool sound.
I wonder if there are any modern analogs to teeth ground down over time due to diet.
Yeah, I don't know.
You know, like, can we look at, is there a place where this happens now, and so there's. I'm just asking these questions sort of rhetorically. There are probably answers to them. I'm just wondering, like this whole.
Once again, we don't have the watcher who would probably
right.
know.
He'd be looking this stuff up and being like, no, yes, no, and here's where it is, and it happens in Tibet. But the teeth thing, I've done a lot of research based on teeth because teeth are, in terms of finding hominid remains, teeth are pretty common because they're hard.
Yeah, they stick around.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can find a lot of teeth, and the taurodont type, which is a Neanderthal phenotype of tooth or morphological tooth, has a very specific kind of molar. And you look at the Neanderthal teeth, and then you look at a Homo sapiens teeth, the same molar from the same spot in the jaw, and the Neanderthal tooth is way bigger, like probably twice the size, if not, maybe 2 times the size or whatever. It's pretty big. And the ones I've seen are not worn down.
Yeah.
They're worn just like anybody's tooth would be. You use it and it gets worn. Every molar has jagged stuff on the top, and that stuff slowly gets worn down, but it doesn't get worn down to the jawline. You couldn't chew if your tooth was worn down that far. You would everything you bit would be hitting the nerves, wouldn't it? At least in our teeth.
I have no idea. Yeah, I don't know.
That's why people when you get a cavity, it gets a hole in there, and stuff gets in and starts poking the nerve. Yeah, because there's a nerve in every tooth.
Maybe if it's slow enough, the nerve, I don't know.
Yeah,
atrophies.
Maybe they're just beaten down. They chew so hard because they got these enormous jaw muscles. But it seems very difficult to me that you could you could grind your teeth down that far and have them still be functional.
Yeah, I don't know.
And I've had teeth problems before, and I like trying to eat when you have serious dental issues that's a death sentence if you don't have good dental.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Or just a sentence to applesauce for life.
Right. Which, how are you going to get that?
Smashed apples.
Well, if you live in a period where everyone's teeth are getting worn down because they're having to eat really hard stuff, you don't have a lot of smashed apples lying around. It seems like.
Grind those apples up with a boat stone.
Yeah.
And just drink it.
Smashed apples. And you can boil anything and make it softer.
Yeah. Except rocks. I'm trying not to laugh. Screw that guy. He's mad that we were laughing.
Oh.
I'm trying not to laugh.
That reminds me. I did have an email to read about that.
Tangent.
Yeah. I'm not trying not to laugh.
I'm working on my etiquette here, man.
Yeah, well, I am.
I was hoping he was working on his attitude. I'm working on my etiquette.
He's not going to work on his attitude, you can tell. He totally thinks we're freaking CIA. Okay, so...
Laughing at my own jokes.
So we got this email like maybe a day or two after we posted the show where we read the comment from the guy, Indrid Lukewarm, who was mad at us for laughing and also thought that we were trying to establish credibility in this community.
Our cover.
Yeah. So this came from Patricia, and she says, I just recommended your podcast to a friend and prefaced my recommendation with, love their maniacal giggles. Don't stop laughing.
Sweet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We won't. We aren't.
Can't. It's too hard.
This stuff is funny.
Yeah.
All right.
That's my favorite part about hanging out, having a conversation is making,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the
there's-
content is fascinating and stuff, but,
Yeah.
You got to joke about it.
Right. And I joke way less than I want to. All while you're reading that article, I'm thinking of all kinds of stuff I can say, and I'm just holding back because I'm like, no, this is serious stuff. We need to pay attention. And I'm trying not, but I had to be like, wait, his name is Potts? I had to say that one because it's an acronym, but for the most part, I'm holding back, guy.
Yeah.
Work on your attitude.
Me too. Holding back all the time.
All right, so this one was making the rounds and also sent to us by a couple of people. One of them is our good friend at GMA, who you may know from previous episodes. So I got, again, from ancient-origins.net, but this has been all over the internet. Origin of Greek civilization believed found on monumental pyramid island. So, a new discovery has possibly revealed the origin of ancient Greek culture in a remote and uninhabited pyramid-shaped islet. Archaeologists have found evidence of a rich cultural and monumental landscape dating from earlier than the Minoan period. The evidence so far is that it was a major religious center created with technical knowledge predating that found at Minoan Knossos by at least 400 years, indicating that it played a significant role in the development of Greek civilization. The barren islet of Daskaleo, God, all these names. I'm having a hard time with the names today. Why can't they just do archaeology in America so I can read all the names? They need to start just doing archaeology in America so I can understand how to say the names. Okay, so the barren islet of Daskaleo lies just off the coast of the island of Keros, which is one of the Cyclades Islands in the Aegean Sea, and was once part of Keros before sea levels rose. Daskaleo has been the subject of intense archaeological investigation since 2015 when an undisturbed site was located. The research is being carried out by a multinational team supported by the Greek government and the British School in Athens. The large-scale project is being funded by several international institutes. The project is led by Colin Renfrew and Michael Boyd and has found the earliest truly monumental complex of buildings ever unearthed anywhere in the Greek world, reports The Independent. The islet had a settlement with metalworking shops, buildings, and even indoor plumbing, and all of this a millennium before the Minoans, who are often thought of as the first European civilization. According to the Keep Talking Greece website, the team of archaeologists have uncovered a complex, stratified, and technically expert society. Daskaleo has a distinctive pyramid shape, which is due to the extensive engineering activities of the ancient people of the Aegean Islands. They deliberately exaggerated the pyramidal shape of the rocky outcrop by creating a number of huge terraces on Daskaleo that measured in total about 1,000 feet. There were 6 terraces, and upon them were built a number of buildings, mostly in marble. Some of the buildings were 2 floors and had staircases and were built using marble, they say again. The cultural landscape was built within a 4-decade period and based on a single design. Wow. Built within 40 years and all based. So it's very, like everything was pre-planned.
Right. Yep. Burgeoning civilization. Hey, guys.
Yeah.
I have a master plan.
Yeah.
Civilization begins.
Yeah. The complex has been dated to about 4,600 years ago. It is believed that the Pyramid Island was a religious site that attracted pilgrims from far and wide who buried small statues here as sacrifices to unknown deities. How do they know they were burying them to deities if they're unknown?
Yeah.
The summit of the Pyramid Islet was...
How is it a sacrifice if it's a statue?
It takes a long time to make a statue, and then you just bury it in a
I
hole.
guess that's true.
It's the sacrifice of the work to make the statue? I don't know. It's a good question. The whole thing about statues being buried, especially if they're buried upside down with a bunch of burnt stuff, I'm like, that was something else.
Yeah, magic.
Yeah.
Religious
Erasing,
practices.
like those Olmec heads were all buried in deep pits upside down with, not all of them, but a lot of them. The summit of the Pyramid Islet was an open area possibly used for sacrifices or votive offerings. The identity of the gods that were worshipped here is unknown. There is no arable land on the rocky outcrop and little on Keros. Therefore, the inhabitants of ancient Daskaleo may have depended on religious pilgrims and also engaged in trade. Keep Talking Greece website reports that archaeological finds indicate that the settlers' trade extended over a wide network reaching beyond the Cyclades. I think that's how you say that. There is evidence that the inhabitants specialized in metallurgy, and they may have traded their metal products for food and other goods. So it was like a factory or something. It's like, if you see one giant thing pre-built with housing built in, and you think this is a factory.
Yeah. A religious factory.
Right. Where you make metal objects for people to come and you bury your statue right there and you can have this sword.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Such a huge complex required a great deal of labor and organization, especially to bring the marble from the quarries on Naxos that was used in its construction. According to The Independent, it is estimated that at least 3,500 maritime voyages to transport between 7,000 and 10,000 tons of shining white marble. This indicated that the builders of the complex were already great mariners and shipbuilders. The huge scale of the work required would suggest a powerful and unified state or league of smaller political entities. It is probable that the site was related to the first Hellenic state in history. The engineering, complexity of organization, shipbuilding, and metalworking needed to achieve the building of such a place indicates that this civilization was already quite advanced by this time, indicating that the culture had existed and had been developing for hundreds of years or more. This political entity was at least contemporaneous with and may have influenced the development of the Minoans in Crete and later the Mycenaeans. It appears that the Bronze Age complex was part of a wave of similar monumental buildings that occurred around the world at this time. This was a result of new technologies or the exchange of new ideas spread via trade routes. The pyramid shape of the islet would seem to indicate the influence of ancient Egypt, who associated this shape with their creator god. It is possible that the pyramid-shaped island represented to the early Greeks land rising from the primordial sea, a belief inspired by ancient Egyptian myth.
Wait, are they saying that the Egyptian pyramids represent their god?
Yeah,
What?
primordial god. That's what it's saying.
Well, okay,
Yeah.
cool.
The construction of the pyramid-shaped complex is arguably related to the importance that the Greeks attached to the mountains in their religion. For example, Mount Olympus was regarded as the home of Zeus and the other deities in their mythology. It is reasonable to assume that the idea that mountains were sacred may have originated in the Cyclades and indicate that the Aegean Islands played a decisive role in the religious development of the ancient Hellenic world. The Independent quotes Michael Boyd saying that the team's research, quote, suggests that these very early Greeks were organizationally, technically, and politically much more advanced than previously thought. This may indicate that the Cyclades Islands were possibly the cradle of Hellenic civilization. Their religious ideas, technology, and political organization may have influenced the Minoans and in turn the Greeks on the mainland. It seems likely that the Pyramid Island will continue to provide more insights into some of the earliest Hellenic societies.
Pushing it back
Yep.
once again.
Stuff keeps getting older. There's 4 comments.
I read a
Let's see
book
what these trolls are
a
saying.
while back about Atlantis. You know, the guy was exploring the idea of Atlantis or the Atlanteans. And he was...
Sorry, I'm looking at the comments.
he was proposing that it was the... What's the name of the...
Mycenae?
No, these people that they're saying that... just had the name, forgot it. Basically, it's
Minoans?
Minoans, I think. Because they had ships or whatever, and they went all over the place.
Yeah.
And he looked into the Michigan copper mines and all that. And
Right, but if these guys are doing metallurgy, where were they getting the metal?
yeah,
And it was Bronze Age, they're claiming.
that's what I'm talking about. So it's interesting.
So you need copper and tin.
Yeah.
One of the comments on here says, why is everything religious in the ancient world? Not everything we do is religious. WTF. Sounds like a snake bro to me.
Yep.
All right.
Last break.
Last break. Snakes!
With forked tongues, we hail from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, uttering syllables
Syllables.
and maniacal giggles.
Maniacal giggling.
Yeah. So, enough about teeth. Let's talk about fangs. Now, I had change the subject here.
Okay.
I had a physics thought
All right.
that I wanted, and we may have kind of touched around the area of this idea before, but I wanted to get your thought on this. If relativity, the idea of space and time being connected in a way that weird things happen with time if you're moving at ridiculous speeds or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. All that kind of stuff. Time dilation, etc. If the Big Bang idea is true and relativity is also true, how do we know how old the universe actually is? Because space would have had to expand out at such a ridiculous rate that by the time, there's no way to know.
That's inflation you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no way to know how far or how long it took the light from these distant objects in space to get to where we are, or the background radiation, if there's expansion, or if...
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? I don't understand how these two ideas can coexist, is my point. How can you have the Big Bang and also relativity at the same time and think that you have any idea how old anything is when you look out there?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, it seems like it would get, at least during the inflational period right after the Big Bang, that there would be that it should be a question mark because of that, for sure.
Yeah, and if there was a central point to this explosion, on one side it's going that way, on the other side it's going the opposite direction, and there's all kinds of light and radiation radiating out everywhere, every different direction, and we happen to be in some part of it later that's still got to be moving at some ridiculous speed.
Yeah.
And everything else is also moving at ridiculous speeds. And space is also what? I don't know. You see what I'm saying? It's how do we know then when we look at a distant object, it's exactly this far away. If the time...
Because when that light started traveling, the universe is much smaller.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question. I agree with you that it has always seemed hard to put those two together. And I mean, there's parts of the inflation theory that talk about how space had to move at it had to expand. It's not moving technically, but space is expanding at speed at a rate that would be equivalent to much greater than the speed of light itself.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying too, is that if the Big Bang idea also is saying that space itself was part of the explosion, not just, it's you have all the space and then all the stuff in the space.
Into the space, yeah.
All the stuff is being compacted down like one giant black hole or something.
Yeah.
But all of the space of the universe is already there, just empty.
Yeah,
that would be one thing, but that's not really what they're saying.
Right. That space was also created.
Yeah. So how do we know?
So what even was it? That's the other question.
Well, I mean, before you even go there, I mean, come on, guy.
Well, I mean, what explodes and generates space by blowing up?
Right. That too. But let's just say that it happened. Just
what if you could make a bomb that was a space bomb, and when it blew up, it just made space right there?
Man, I would clean my room with that thing.
Use it on my house. Suddenly, I have a 6,000 square foot house.
That's right. But yeah, if all of the space and the matter and the light and all of the room, the space that in which the light travels and all of these laws of physics take place, it seems like you can't have the same laws when during this like high concentration of all matter and space itself.
Yeah.
Things have to be different.
So
then how can we actually say, oh, well, it's this old just based on the situation right now?
yeah.
It just doesn't.
Well, one thing that I've thought is that maybe what was created was not space, but the proverbial ether that is the fabric of everything.
Yeah.
So space itself is something else. But what we think when they're talking about space time, they're actually talking about this quantum field or whatever it is that is being fluctuated by stuff. That's what is generated and has a massive inflationary period. You can't have a universe without that quantum field there. So
Yeah, you can't have stuff.
but they just associate quote unquote space with that quantum field and its own fluctuations.
Okay, if that's what's going on, yeah, I'll have to,
Have to chew on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't wear your teeth down on it.
Back to teeth.
But yeah, that's what I've thought is like that the equating of space with what is actually the quantum field.
Yeah.
Space time, and this is what maybe generates what we think of as relativity, because all these interactions with this field. And
Yeah, but still, even to imagine that any of these quantum fields being confined to the edges of something is weird.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
it's the residual energy of the explosion itself.
Yeah, so like a magnetic field has the sort of inverse square law of attraction or
Yeah.
repulsion or whatever it is. So the further, but it never actually completely goes away, right? You
Yeah.
just keep getting further away. It keeps getting lower and lower and lower.
Yeah, gravity is the same way, and
Yeah.
yeah,
And that's the other thing. Okay, the other thought that I was having that I was just enjoying mystifying myself with is the idea that all of the energy in the universe equals zero.
yeah,
That basically you have equilibrium. Everything at equilibrium would be zero energy, and then you disturb that equilibrium, and you've got these polar opposite energies. It's not necessarily negative energy or positive energy. It's
Yeah.
just it's the fact that it's not at equilibrium, so that there's an exchange.
yeah,
So if you canceled out all of the polarized energies in the universe, you would just have nothing.
zero.
And that is freaking cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
That would be that would work more towards a steady state too.
Yeah. So whenever you hear these hippies like, oh man, we need balance, it's like everything is already balanced.
Yeah, yeah,
Nothing you can do about that.
that's right.
It cannot be imbalanced.
And I was thinking about there for a while there was the idea of maybe magnetic monopoles. If you could find if such a thing existed, that it would be a very powerful object. If you could find such a thing.
Maybe that's what entanglement is like on the quantum level, one object being entangled with another is just
they're monopoles.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they're still connected somehow.
They're connected through the quantum fields.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the reason people thought that there might be magnetic monopoles is because gravity appears to be monopolar, at least where we are.
Yeah. Well, the electric universe people would be mad at you for saying that.
Yeah, yeah. So would the elastic universe people. And that's us. But still, so we've talked about this before, the idea of symmetry. Like, why isn't there symmetry? there appears to be symmetry across all these other things. So why don't we see it on these other forces?
Yeah.
You know, so that right now the universe we see in the standard model appears to be asymmetrical, and that doesn't make any sense. It's asymmetrical not only in the fact that gravity does not have a polar opposite, an anti-gravity of a sort, but it's also asymmetrical in the sense that we know that antimatter is just as likely to be generated by some kind of Big Bang event as matter is. And if everything was symmetrical, then there should be no material at all, because there should have been the same amount of antimatter as matter created in the Big Bang, and they should have annihilated each other very early on, and you result in nothing but radiant energy instead of any material.
Yeah.
And yet there seems to be a residual, large in the micro sense, but overall, what you see is like what we look out there and we see all these galaxies and stars, all that represents like less than 1% of the energy that was generated by the Big Bang explosion. And that's because a very tiny amount of matter, there was a very tiny amount more of matter than antimatter generated. And why is that? It's asymmetrical. So that leads to the idea that somewhere out there are entire sections of the universe that are actually made of antimatter.
Yeah.
But they would have to be very far separated from the matter parts, or else there would be crazy interactions happening at the boundaries of those places.
Right.
And we don't see that.
The other weird thing is that that there's basically more energy in all the empty space out there than there is everywhere else.
Yeah. Yeah, the dark energy stuff.
I love that too.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know, the whole dark matter, like they keep not finding it.
Yeah.
And at this point, people are just like, it's not going to be found. It doesn't exist. You know, I've seen this. Some pretty well-known scientists are saying like, okay, the search for dark matter has failed.
Yeah.
Like, in other words, implying that we don't know.
Stop calling it matter.
Yeah. Stop
it's
calling it
something
that.
else.
We don't know what it is. We see the effect, but we don't know what it is. And we've assumed that it's a gravitic effect caused by some kind of material, and we have not found it at all.
Yeah.
And we've made up entire particles, classes and groups, and thinking, well, this could be what they are. Let's look for this, and they don't exist, and they're not found.
Yeah.
So the dark energy.
That's why I love the idea that matter is not the source of gravity.
Right.
You know, the collection, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And like the idea that dark energy is the anti-gravity that we're looking for, the polar opposite of gravity, but it only works on enormous structures.
Yeah.
And that's weird.
But I also like the electric universe idea that gravity is just another part of the electrical field,
Yeah.
because it has both an attraction and repulsion.
Yeah. It
Force.
just seems weird that it doesn't interact with the electrical field if it's part of it. There doesn't seem to be an effect there. You know? For a while, my problem with the electric universe was like, I'm like, well, the electrical field has a polarity, and so it does equal zero across the universe.
Yeah.
And so you can't.
You've got charge, and charge, you can just count it.
Right. But if any force that has that is polarized will net zero over large structures because it's polarized, right? You're going to have a certain amount of positive. So like on any object that has a magnetic field, it's got a north and south pole. And if you add up those two things, you get a zero. Now, the effect of that is at zero because you can be only being affected by the north side or the south side, depending on where you are around the object in relation to it, right? But the net energetic effect of that magnetic field is zero. If you add up the North Pole and the South Pole and what they do, you end up with a zero. You end up with zero if you're talking about their...
Yeah, if you isolate it and it's only...
Yeah, if you're talking about within itself, it's going to be a net zero. So gravity doesn't seem to do that.
Yep.
Gravity doesn't have a pole. At least not in the three dimensions that we talk about, right? So magnetic poles, electromagnetic spectrum, the magnetic poles operate in the three dimensions. So I can go up here and be on the north side, or I can go down here and be on the south side. But on that same object, anywhere I go, I'm on I'm being affected by one pole of the gravitic effect of it.
See, that's why Hollow Earth makes sense.
You're on the inside of the Earth.
You're stuck to the
Stuck to
you're
the
stuck to the inside wall.
That's sort of
All
the
the
answer.
Hollow Earth people are standing upside down on the inside of the wall, being shoved out.
And on the outside, we're all being pulled in.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, that's the question is, why isn't there a pole to gravity? That's asymmetrical. Why is there more matter than antimatter? That's asymmetrical.
Yep. We're going to figure it out. It's going to happen.
But is dark energy the pole of gravity? Is it that in other words, that unlike a regular just a three-dimensional magnetic pole where I can move to certain parts of the object and be affected by it, gravity's pole is across size or scale, right? So on small scales, quote unquote small relatively, gravity is all pull. But once you get out to the large sizes, gravity is all push.
And that's why everything's flying apart.
Right.
I like that.
So that's the pole. Gravity's pole goes across scale instead of space.
Yeah. That's really cool. Now I'm going to have to work on a mechanism for that. I'm going to have to start imagining, okay, if it's small, it's sucking things together. And
Right.
if it's large, it's throwing them apart.
It's like throwing them apart, yeah.
We're going to figure out how that works. Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
You solved it.
Well, I don't know, because dark energy seems to be a very large amount of the energy in the universe.
Yeah, but it's the same deal. So dark matter, if you add up all of the sort of gravitic energy with all of the matter that we see,
Yeah.
and then all the dark matter,
You get a net zero.
no, you add them all together, and then you take dark energy as the polar opposite.
Oh, right. Yeah. Sorry, you said dark matter, not dark
Yeah.
energy. Yeah. Yeah.
Because dark matter is basically like they're
it's
seeing
a gravitic
gravitation.
effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't need the matter because it's not associated with that. Matter is being affected by it, obviously.
Right. So if you take all the known matter gravity and then the
Plus the dark
dark
matter
matter gravity and add that all together, will it cancel out the dark energy and you get a net zero?
Yeah,
and
then you
symmetry.
Then you might be onto something.
Yeah, I guess so. Hard to count those things though.
Yeah.
They're all estimates.
Yeah.
And those estimates are based on the Copernican principle that everything is the same in every direction,
Yeah.
generally speaking. Like, what do you think about that? How do you end up with a Copernican principle in a giant explosion?
Yeah, we must be in the middle.
Right. Seems like we should be in the middle if it worked out that way.
Yeah, unless the whole idea of, if it really is, if everything is accelerating away from everything else at an accelerating rate, then we would need to be in the middle before everywhere we look is the same, because once you get a certain distance away, we can't see it anymore because it's so redshifted.
Oh, yeah. It gets.
In other words, the entire system is so big that it doesn't that at a certain, like, within the interior to a certain degree, it wouldn't matter where you were as long as you weren't very near the edge.
Yeah.
Right. Once you were inside into the interior just far enough, then everywhere you look, it looks the same because everything's traveling away from everything.
What does
so
the
fast.
edge look like?
It would just, I don't know, but I'm talking about in terms of light and radiation.
Yeah, I know. I'm just
So
wondering.
if you looked that way, it would just be darker.
Yeah.
Generally, because you're closer to the edge there.
Yeah.
In other words, we look out so far, we've got the cosmic microwave background or whatever, which is the quote unquote furthest thing, but it's the same in every direction. There's no more cosmic radio or background radiation in that direction.
Yeah.
Because it's all because everything's traveling away from everything else and accelerating, it's all redshifted out of
Yeah.
It's never going to reach us
Right.
from every direction. Whereas if we could detect all of it, we might say, okay, it's more concentrated over there and less concentrated over here. Perhaps. I think that's the idea.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the idea.
So we know basically that we're not close to the edge. That's about it.
Another weird effect of relativistic theory is the idea that, like, if you were in a spaceship and you had a big, let's say your spaceship was spherical and you just had a huge window on one part of it and your control area was right in the middle of the sphere. So you're sitting in the middle of the sphere and you got this whole hemisphere that's a window. So you can see all the stars and you're out in space and you're sort of sitting still relative to whatever body you're nearby. You're orbiting a star or something like that. And you're looking out at space and you can see everything. If you start accelerating in some direction and your ship is really powerful and you get up to relativistic speeds and you begin to approach the speed of light, as you're looking out your window, the universe will appear to begin to coalesce. It'll start to pull together. And then when you reach like an appreciable, like when you're up at 99% speed of light, you've reached that speed and you're like really burning it. You can't ever totally get to light speed, but you're up there where you're now you're a relativistic object. The universe will be a single bright blob of gamma rays right in the middle of your view in the direction you're traveling. And it will be such heavy radiation, even all the cosmic microwave background radiation, which is down in the radio spectrum, will like get, the frequency will go up and up and up as you move, and it'll become hard radiation that's incredibly dangerous.
Yeah.
Everything in the universe will look like that. It'll be this bright, like a giant welding light right in the middle, and it'll be deadly.
It's like
in every possible way.
Because of the Doppler effect, basically.
Yeah.
Because you're going towards those
frequencies,
frequencies, they get higher and higher frequency.
And then if you just spun your ship on its axis to look behind you, you would see nothing. It would just be black.
It'd be so...
Because it would be so redshifted that there would be almost no light whatsoever. But in the direction,
But it would still be passing you at light speed. It's just the wavelengths are so ridiculously
far
long
apart that you can't.
They wouldn't even be
right.
They wouldn't be waving at all.
But think about that. Just the regular light from the universe, and there's a lot of hard radiation flying around in the universe. The whole thing about there's a lot of deadly stuff flying around in the universe. But if you started moving at relativistic speeds, it would become incredibly. The shielding on your ship would have to be ridiculous. This is one of the reasons why the best way to travel in space is actually to just sort of sneak over into another dimension and do it there, because you don't want all that light burning you while you're trying to travel really fast. So if you could just like slip out into some other, or wrap a bubble of space around you that had no stars and other radiation in it.
Yeah, that's how we overcome the same problem with air. Like the faster you go in air, the hotter it gets.
Right,
and
the
you'll
harder
start
it's sliding.
burning up.
Yeah,
so you just go up above the air.
Yeah.
And you go really
wrap
fast.
a bubble
and
of
then come
metal
back
around
down
you and go up above the air and go really fast. That's right.
Yep, same principle.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. That's always seemed strange to me. That I probably have talked about this on the podcast before, but I read a science fiction story about a ship that couldn't slow down.
Yeah, and it was hitting like entire galaxies and ringing the ship.
Yeah, boom! Just passed through another galaxy. But they were still only going lights. They were going just under light speed, but because they kept accelerating, the relativistic effect kept increasing. Now they'll never reach light speed, but because they could not stop accelerating at max acceleration, over time their relativistic dilation, the time dilation, became so great that
to them they would
pass through a whole galaxy like it was ringing a bell.
Yeah.
Whereas if you were outside watching the ship, it would just be burning through the galaxy at the speed of light. It would be some unstoppable.
Take 100,000 years to get across.
Yeah, and it would just be some unstoppable, enormous wave front of energy.
Yeah.
That would just destroy anything it passed through and wouldn't even notice it. But in the ship, it was just like, bong! They're like, there's another galaxy, bong! God dang!
Dang it, Johnson, turn this thing off!
You can't go out and fix the freaking engines because the radiation's so bad. So they couldn't stop.
Yeah.
They had to wait for the next big bang. Because that story went on the idea that the universe eventually stops expanding and then it all did the big crunch.
Yeah.
So they had to keep flying while that was happening, and everything is sort of like coming back together, and then they're like orbiting this enormous black hole at like ridiculous speeds, and then they watch it explode and they're like, oh God, and like ride the wave out there. And colonize a planet in the new universe.
That's crazy. That's good stuff.
But yeah, that part when they were trying to ride the explosion and inflation period, they had to switch out pilots every 5 minutes because it was like so stressful. And the author just showed one part where he's actually like manually flying it because the computer can't handle it, and he's just like, ah! And they're like, okay, swap him out. Somebody else sit down and fly the ship. And it's just like, oh my God. All right. I think that's it.
Yeah. One more in the can.
Yep. Bunch of article reading. I had a few more, but that's okay. We can get to them some other time.
Yeah, I had to read that ridiculously long one about molars.
That was really cool. I dig all the teeth stuff, man. Yeah. You guys chew on that for a while. Just it's a good article. I liked how they were playing the two scientists back off of each other. Oh, Potts was not buying it.
Yep.
Show me the pot shirts. He was not buying it. You think they're 160,000 years old? Show me the pot shirts. My name is Dr. Potts.
Yep.
All right, you guys can get a hold of us, brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com. Go to the website, brothersoftheserpent.com. You can comment there, find the encyclopedia and the glossary.
And check out the snake skins.
Yeah, snake skins. You can buy swag. I also, I'm liking the value for value system that's happening here. We've never really called it that, but I've recently found out that this is what it is called. So what that also means is that you guys get, like, if you can't support us monetarily, you can support us in any other way you care to. So we have somebody, Jordan, I think I read a couple of his comments on the last show over Twitter. He has now started us a Facebook page. Right? So there is now a Brothers of the Serpent Facebook page on Facebook. He is running it. I think the Watcher's on Facebook every now and then, so he's probably going to be an admin there. So you guys can, if you're on Facebook, find the Brothers of the Serpent page. It's brand new. He just started it. But join up. You guys can share shows, talk about snakes, whatever you do on Facebook, whatever it is, whatever else it is you do on Facebook. So
yeah, thanks,
like
buddy.
That, yeah, thanks so much, man. And stuff like that is part of the value for value. So you can donate, you can support the show. There is the Brothers of the Serpent pyramid scheme, the donate button right there on the website. You can also go to patreon.com/Brothers of the Serpent, and I will put a link to that on the website at some point. I just haven't done it yet. Also, like Kyle said, you can go to the Snakeskins, buy some swag. There's just, if you want to get stuff, stickers are cheap. You can get a whole bunch of stickers. And they're pretty cheap, and you can just like slap them in bar restrooms and stuff. Just tag the freaking toilets. Whap, Brothers of the Serpent. Just get a whole stack of them and take them wherever you go. You see a freaking traffic cone. Whap, Brothers of the Serpent. Also, follow us on Twitter @SnakeBros with no vowels, SNKBRS. And give us reviews. You guys have been giving us a lot of reviews. That really helps spread the show, share the show, and also share it wherever you can. And now you can share it on Facebook. We got the Facebook page, so you can share that too. And also, thanks to History Shift. You can find him on Twitter @HistoryShift. He makes all of our videos for our YouTube channel, so you can go on YouTube and look up Brothers of the Serpent. We are there. Brandon's got over 100 of our shows on there. And you can find him on YouTube also. Just look up History Shift on YouTube. He's got a bunch of interesting videos and a whole bunch of playlists of cool videos about interesting stuff. And he's also got a blog about where he goes looking for glacial erratics and dolmens. And he's actually there's kind of a cool story behind this. I turned him on to it because he asked, he was listening to the show and he sent me a message like, hey, you said that like, you know about weird places nearby people. Like, is there any weird stuff I can go look at nearby me? And I was like, yeah, there's something of the gods, something or other park or whatever. And I knew it because I had seen this website about weird ancient quote unquote dolmens or human constructions in his area. And he looked it up. He's like, oh my God, that's like right next to where I live. Right. And then he found out that there's been this woman who is not licensed to be a guide. And this is all in national park area, right? National forest. There's a woman who is not licensed or anything like that who's been making people pay she keeps all the locations secret. And she gets people to pay her for her to take them out on these things, and she fills them full of all this stuff about Atlantis and how these were built by Atlanteans using crystal technology and shit like that. Right?
Wow.
And it's totally illegal. She's basically doing something you have to get a guide license to do that stuff from the national park system, and she didn't have that. So he's actually gotten her busted. And he's also propagating, like he's putting up flyers with jump drives that have all the locations on Google Earth, like a KMZ file that you can just plug into your computer and it shows you where they all are. He's trying to get it like people could just go to these places. You don't have to pay somebody. And he's gotten her busted now. She got caught because he saw her he saw a group being let out and he was like, holy shit, that's her. Right. And it actually turns out that she's making her teenage son do it. She's just sitting at home raking in the cash.
What?
Right. So he was actually like got video of him like sneaking behind him, following this group or whatever. And then he calls the park service. He's like, yeah, I'm following him right now. And they come out there and bust him, dude. So anyway, it's a great saga and you can read about it on his blog, historyshift.blogspot.com. It's a fantastic story. Great Snake Bros, Snake Force work right there, buddy. Making me proud, man. And apparently she's written this gigantic rant about it on her Facebook page too. So the whole thing is hilarious. What else we got? Henry?
Yep.
Henry Hablack. You can find him on Instagram at @HHablack. He's a badass artist, does tattoo stuff. He's sent us a whole bunch of stuff we got hanging up at the Tangent Cube here. Very mind-expanding images. Looks very, I don't know, like rock art petroglyphy stuff. Very cool. You know?
Reminds me of tarot.
Yeah, tarot, but also, I don't know, it looks like Australian rock art too. Very detailed kind of things, but very clean lines. Great artist and full of ancient symbolism and mind exploding and expanding things.
Love it.
So you can find him at @HHablack on Instagram, and he's also got a website, hermetica.bigcartel.com. Is that it? Panels? Acoustic paneling?
Yeah, acoustic paneling solutions. Send an email to our buddy Kmart if you need fantastic acoustic panels for your podcast studio or your living room. He makes fantastic design, lightweight, beautiful construction. Send him an email, acousticpanelingsolutions@gmail.com, and be like, Kmart, I need panels.
Yeah.
Snake Bros.
Yeah. Also, Kyle makes all the music. You can find a bunch of his stuff on $50dynasty.net or .com. That's the name of his band. The music we use in this show, most of it is on SoundCloud, so you can find it there.
Do you put a bunch of it up there or what?
Yeah. The ones that I had, I put on SoundCloud like a long time ago.
Oh, okay.
I talked to you about it because people were asking
we
for
need to stick some more up there then.
Yeah. But the other thing I was going to say is like, some people have said, I want to make this, I want to write the song or whatever. It's, do it. Send it to us. Or if you come up with like ideas for little, because we have our
Life.
we got our little soundboard here. If you come up with any like sound effects you think we could have, or you just want to shout snakes, we could put it on the sound cue, man. This is the value for value system. Send us stuff. Send us jingles.
Yeah, we do have a new mailing address for one-up boxes.
Oh yeah.
So send us an email.
If you want to send us stuff through snail mail.
Yeah. Send me a letter.
Yeah. You want to send us swag? We have a P.O. box now, so get a hold of us on email and I'll give it to you. I'm not going to dox us by even through a P.O. box. I don't want weird shit to start showing up. I mean, I do, but only from people who ask for the address of their email.
Yeah.
All right, that's it.
I want to thank everybody for your support and for listening to the show. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. And I'm going to find a rabbit hole soon.
Kyle is going to find a rabbit hole. Yeah, I've got a couple of books I'm looking at to rabbit hole down. We got some guests coming up too, and I think Soraya has asked us to do some more stuff with him, so that should be happening.
Yeah. All right.
That's it. That's a wrap. In the can. Good night, Adamu. Get back to work.